Helios? This has changed. Everything has changed.
Returnal is a third-person shooter roguelike that's designed to be harder than a woodpecker's lips. It's going to be the most premium-priced, high-stakes game of pew-pew that's kicked your ass in years. Your repeated destruction is expected. Your rage may be abundant. Hours of progress will get pissed away quicker than a pay packet on St. Paddy's Day. And through it all, I reckon you're still going to become powerlessly addicted to its cycle as you returnal for more. Like a noobish Tom Cruise in your very own Edge of Tomorrow, you're gonna come back. Again.
On your feet, maggots.
And again.
On your feet, maggots.
And again.
Maggots.
A good run in this game needs to be an equilateral triangle of slick hand-eye coordination, sensible risk management, and a large blessing from our Lord and Saviour in randomness, RNGesus. If you have the time, temperament, and skills, Returnal will elevate from mere twitch shooting to zen-like ultra-violence. You, the dual sense in your hands, and those Pulse 3D headphones perched on your lug nuts will just fade away in the heat of battle. If you're looking for a quick verdict now, what we have here is nothing less than a must-have PS5 exclusive. Some critics, who clearly haven't been paying enough attention to the medium at all, will tell you that Returnal is a sleeper hit. The moment when developer Housemarque stepped up into the big leagues. It's not quite that. I'd prefer to classify this new species for what it actually is. An inevitability that's finished gestating. Returnal represents 25 years of preeminent, arcade-blasting experience that's finally face-hugged itself onto a third-person shooter, which is a more mainstream-friendly host. The mutant that we've seen emerge here today isn't the perfect organism, but it sure does deliver chest bursts of brilliance more often than not. And you know what? Why should I tell you when I can show you? Here's a quick 2-minute look at how Returnal gets down. Be sure to use the YouTube seek bar to find more sections like this where I just shut up and let the game talk for itself, or you can use the same seek bar to skip these entirely and get to my thoughts. Talk in a minute. So let's quickly skim over what I feel is the least important part of this game. The plot. Housemarque is a twin-stick shooting king that's not known for its narratives. I like this game, but after being exposed to this minimally told, often confusing and at times bloody surreal tale, I still don't think they'll be known for their narratives. The very basic gist is you're Celine, a spacefarer who certainly isn't Gwendolyn Christie, so stop asking. For reasons that won't be addressed for many, many hours, she's been lured by a white shadow broadcast that's emanating from the quarantined planet of Atropos. Celine's just planned a lovely day trip there, but unfortunately she's screwed up the dismount, and the date she's selected for a visit happens to be the alien equivalent of... Yes! And that's pretty much the whole deal. Instead of breaking free of this cosmic shenanigan by finding and banging Space Andy McDowell, Celine decides she's just going to fight her way through an environment that's teeming with xenomorphs that are somehow more annoying and aggressive than Ned Ryerson. Bang! But hey, look at the bright side. None of these hostile indigenous life forms want to sell you life insurance. Because the bad news is, Celine's already on the most premium plan imaginable. Upon death, she restarts back at her Helios spacecraft with not a dent in her fender. That being said, 95% of all the other crap she's collected will evaporate. Even worse, the path that she just trailblazed through will completely reconfigure into something else. You're going to rinse and repeat like that across 6 different biomes guarded by just as many bosses. You'll also get just as many first-person moments where Housemarque does its best impression of PT. Though these moments only really add to your growing confusion rather than inform or unnerve you in any real way. Honestly, the bulk of exposition comes at you in one of 2 ways. 2-second bursts of mysterious imagery every time you die, or via the many audio logs left by the Selines who have come before or after you.
Xenoglyphs spoke of their single-mindedness, but did not prepare me for... I barely managed to dispatch the sentients that attacked me. I've never encountered such hostility and madness.
Obviously, I'm not going to say too much about the resolution to this story, but I did find it to be only satisfactory, a bit ham-fisted in parts. Celine herself is well voiced, it's just that she's not engaging or even likeable. She comes in 2 speeds, either very grim and scientifically detached, or, in the case of her NPC recordings, she's clearly on the wrong side of the event horizon of madness. Basically what I'm saying is this: if it was the storytelling element that drew you into Returnal's orbit in the first place, the juice is totally worth the squeeze. Eventually. Just be prepared for a long, drip-fed slog to get any sort of answers. It's also worth noting that there's a bunch of stuff waiting for you beyond the end credits, so definitely stick around for that. Personally, I'd recommend Returnal more for the sublime action gameplay it delivers, something I'm going to detail after this 2-minute gameplay break. As Housemarque fans of Super Stardust, Resogun, Matterfall, Alienation and Nex Machina would expect, the action is the main event of Returnal. Frankly, what's here is the best work I've seen from the studio. The cumulative knowledge of a developer who spent a quarter of a century going through bullet hells and back. This is balls-to-the-wall action that will ruthlessly punish you, even if you're only momentarily distracted. It also delights in a ton of risk-reward opportunities that are always there to give you just enough rope to hang your more stupider versions of Celine. Sloth may be the first sin that does you in. To not sprint about like a headless chicken in an arcade shooter is to invite the Grim Reaper over for tea and strumpets. But even you veterans may be compelled to slow down or even stop in some of your first runs. You see, Housemarque has gone for an unorthodox control scheme that uses the adaptive L2 trigger as a dual function. Using that unfamiliar addition effectively, in tandem with Celine's ninja-like mobility, can take some time to get used to. It works like this: squeeze L2 in 45% or lower and you'll slide into a zoomed fire mode. Pull it to 50% and beyond and you'll ready your weapon's alt fire function. In your early runs, expect to pause in your tracks or accidentally interrupt your own bullet output as you, like some sort of learner driver, struggle to find the right shooting gear. These are the pauses that will wrap you around a tree, or an alien ant. Atropos has those for some reason. Essentially, I'm telling you that there's a very short learning curve before your muscle memory will accept this new L2, and then everything's just going to click, and it'll become the best thing since sliced heads. The new control scheme actually demands some physical discipline from your fingers when crap is hitting the fan, and I love that. In the exact same vein, cool-headed gamers who can tactically squeeze their R2 trigger to fire will live a whole lot longer. There's an active reload mechanic, you see, that starts right after you click empty. If you're fan firing and just fapping away, you're going to miss out on a faster reload, and that's going to get you killed. Selene also has access to a bunch of other Metroidvania exploration enabling upgrades that do actually become permanent. I'm talking about grapple hooks, translocation tech, and diving gear for when the game takes a break from aliens by going on a holiday into the abyss. All of the following bits of gear are equally important, but it's worth noting that they all fall victim to the dreaded death reset. Firstly, you have a non-regenerative health gauge that can be slowly engorged to roughly 4 times the starter size, providing you keep collecting 3 chunks of resin to do it. Likewise, you have a weapons proficiency rating that improves with kills and effectively makes all future gun rolls come with better stats and perks. And while we're on boomsticks, it's worth noting that while your gun will get lost upon death, the mini perks that you've unlocked while using it will be remembered and get added to the pool of potential perks available in subsequent runs. So yeah, I mean, it always pays to swap, experiment with, and grind with your guns. And I do love that all of our earthly firearm archetypes get a look in, be they assault rifles, shotguns, nade launchers, or RPGs. Everything is punchy and satisfying to use. And hey, in the upper echelons of gun proficiency, they become ludicrously, eyeball-searingly powerful. Lashing all of these bits and bobs together are Returnal's 4 holy commandments. Learn your randomly gifted abilities quick, know your enemies, be spatially aware, and fight like a goddamn mongoose. More specifically on that last point, if you're serious about surviving, you can't get bitten, not even once. I mean, you can get bit, but you're not going to go very far. Returnal has a 5-tier adrenaline meter that stacks incredibly useful, preset perks onto Selene. Killing any 3 enemies will inch you up through those ranks. Getting sneezed on resets you back to nothing. When that occurs, typically the slippery slope to your doom begins. Suddenly losing the ability to spot enemies through walls and reload faster creates all sorts of problems for successful interstellar relations. Speaking of nerve-wracking tightrope walks where one bad decision is death, Housemarque has also instituted Parasites and Malfunctions. They're the game mechanic equivalent of a warm hug with a knee to the groin. Example, a parasite may give you a free key to open a door, but when you do get in there and pick up the loot, it's going to inflict some damage and then kill your adrenaline meter. Malfunctions are similar buff debuffs, but whereas parasites can be ripped off your person at these sort of venereal disease-eating vending machines that Selene is weirdly okay with sticking her body into, a malfunction is more like a little mortgage that has to be worked off. Collecting 300 obolites, read space money, might nullify one. Alternatively, you can just ignore your malfunctions until you acquire 1 too many and literally die at full health on the spot for simply opening an infected chest. Infinitely looped life comes at you fast in Returnal. When you take all of its myriad systems, story, and sadistic for a mainstream title brutality into account, Returnal is still a fantastic game. I've made this simile before, but it really is like that one abusive relationship that you just couldn't quit. I've cursed at Returnal just as many times as I've basked in its euphoric afterglows, typically provided when I flawlessly nailed a challenge room with all the efficiency of Ellen Ripley on methamphetamines. All that praise being lavished, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one experience I had when the no-save nature of Returnal bit me in the arse harder than a tentacled alien direwolf. I had the perfect balance of perks, a gun that could one-shot God. This was it. This was the run that was going to push me past the halfway point and hopefully to the end credits. Instead, this. Beyond that unfortunate, most likely isolated anomaly, and this infuriating scripted moment that dispossesses Celine of many hard-earned gains, Returnal doesn't really put a foot wrong. It plays, looks, feels, and sounds phenomenal. Let me quickly count the ways for you here. Visually, its biomes are stunningly detailed and quite diverse in terms of play space size, colour, and slickly animated beasties. Furthermore, everything loads instantly and the frame rate never skips a beat, despite pelting a frankly insane amount of enemies and their lethal Technicolor excrement at your face. Feels-wise, this overtakes Astro's Playroom as the pinnacle of great haptics expressions and cool adaptive trigger feedback. Housemarque has put a ton of R&D into making all of the guns have these nuanced, chunkerific thumps and tickles. There are so many subtle effects in here to feel, some pertaining to Celine's movement and status effects, others that betray enemy locations before you even visually acquire them. Speaking of enhanced sensors, and while I'm not affiliated with Sony and make zero cut from Pulse 3D headset sales, this is the game to buy them for and to showcase with. The spatial awareness that these provide and the tactical edge they gave me was immediately evident. I won't go into the technicals too much, but recording gameplay of Returnal kind of forced me to use TV speakers. When I figured I had enough footage in the bank, I slipped on my headset and was just blown away by how much better it was. The biggest change? I no longer needed to glance at my minimap to track my foes. I'd already zeroed them, even if they were above or behind me. When I was equipped with headphones, the length of my lives basically tripled. Whichever way you choose to play Returnal, be it augmented with Fandangle tech or natural, what's here is a bona fide AAA, worth your attention. That said, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I do have some minor concerns. Firstly, I look at that price tag and wonder why we're coughing up so many obolites for this. If you clock Returnal, there's not much replayability to be had, beyond daily challenge leaderboards or, I don't know, speedrunning it all over again for bragging rights. Also, while I myself am a fiend for roguelikes and gaming masochism in general, my instincts tell me that this won't land for some gamers. I want to believe that players will stick to their guns and laser swords when these firefights get tough, the deaths rack up, and the new plot breadcrumbs become rare and difficult to subsist upon. But the realist in me knows that a bunch of people will just crack it and jettison this game, because there's next to no way to make it any easier. In short, I dare say that the shelves in the pre-owned section of your local game store could see their fair share of Returnals. That's going to be a damn shame for those quitters, because I'm sold on Returnal. It's well worth owning, and it's well worth keeping. This is indeed the moment when a small, tirelessly hardworking Finnish developer stopped their 2.5D asteroid blasting, looked up, and shot for the moon instead. They've equal parts elevated and mutated their genre of choice to bold new heights. Even the broken mass of defeated players this game will leave in its wake won't be able to deny this. Returnal makes an important evolutionary housemark on the arcade shooter landscape.
This has changed. Everything has changed.